where we're gonna have a little friendly competition with an app called Strava, where we're gonna log our steps, our physical activity, and get heart healthy in the month of October altogether. So those are kind of our chapter updates for right now. Not much from national. As far as membership, keep encouraging where you can and spreading the word to any potential new members. And with that, I'll turn it over to Nicole, right?
Thank you, Christina. So it's my great pleasure tonight to introduce McNeil Keenan. He's the Vice President of Product Management for Cvent. McNeil has been with Cvent for over 13 years, where he is currently the Vice President of Product Management, leading Cvent's mobile, on-site, and virtual solutions. In this position, he leads a 250-plus person product development team focused on delivering solutions that enable event organizers to build engaging event experiences for their attendees, sponsors, and speakers.
All right, let's do this thing. Okay, sorry for those at home. I just see that you're there because you're submitting questions through the app, which is great. You can do online, or for those in the room, you can do it through the mobile app because nobody brought laptops, which that's okay because you're actually here for an in-person event. So it's really exciting. Really exciting. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm McNeil Keenan. I am a Vice President of Product Management at Cvent. I head up our product groups for on-site, mobile, and now virtual solutions at Cvent. So it's been exciting times, good in the way that it's just exciting and made everybody be innovative, bad in that, we're not doing these things anymore, but this is a great first for all of us here, me included. So honored to be invited today. So thanks very much. A couple of housekeeping details. We already went through the mobile app stuff, so hopefully everybody was able to log in. We'll be taking questions at the end. So presentation should be about 30, 35 minutes. Should have 10 or 15 minutes for Q&A. And then, that's pretty much it. So we'll run through it. Of course, we can. You can raise your hand too. That's a thing. You don't just have to type in the questions for those that are here. But of course, we want to give ways for people to participate at home as well. I got to say, it's a little strange to be standing up in front of a room. I'm so used to doing webinars, so sitting at my desk for 6 months and just talking into a camera. So this is a whole new world. All right, so today's agenda: we're going to briefly define hybrid events. Then we're going to look at just the overall virtual technology landscape, right? Like how, for example, today, are we able to produce this experience not just for them, but also for those at home? And so we'll look at some of the different technologies that are shaping what that virtual experience looks like. So of course, that's a key component of hybrid. And then we'll think about the full experience of what a hybrid event really means. What does it mean to be successful both in the room and at home? And then finally, we'll think about what are some of the lasting impacts of, I think, all events on the post-event experience as well. And so we'll go through that. Okay, so to define, I said it was going to be short. It's pretty simple, but I just don't want to, assume anything. A hybrid event, we're talking about an event that has both a component for those that are there physically on site, in person, and those that are attending remotely, right? So it may be a full agenda for both audiences. It may be a truncated agenda for the audience at home. It may even have differentiated content. We'll talk a little bit about that. It's not necessarily the exact same experience, but it certainly is one event with audiences both in person and at home. So that was the brief definition. I told you it was going to be brief, so we'll go to the next part. So when we think about the video landscape, in that video really is at the core of any virtual event experience. A lot of you guys were looking into the space brand new. I know I was in February and early March and learning a lot about it, and everything seemed somewhat similar. What's the difference between webinars and a live cast and a broadcast, a live stream, a virtual conference system, a learning management system, and all this different terminology really kind of seemed the same, but in reality, there's some really important differences. So, for example, video conferencing. Video conferencing technology, tools like Zoom and others, are really meant for conversations, two-way. So if I'm speaking to you, you can speak back, maybe you can share your screen. Typically, those aren't going to be that effective or impactful, but from an audience of about bigger than 50 or so people. Now, technically, can you go above 50? Of course, but then you run into the inevitable dogs barking, siren in the background, hey, can you go on mute? And that's not a great experience for everyone. And then that gets into webinar technology. So webinars started to realize, hey, maybe not everybody that calls in really should be able to speak. And so I'm just going to nominate who my speaker is, who my panelists are, and they're going to be the ones that are talking, and everybody else can interact via polls or Q&A. And webinar technology tends to be great for maybe events up to like 1,000 people. But there certainly are some limitations with webinars. I think live streaming is really that kind of next step up where they're all optimized around a one-way presentation, so there's no ability to speak back, but it's about high quality, it's about scale, and it's about flexibility. So the stream's going to come through in HD. It's going to have great sound quality. It's going to be able to scale to even tens of thousands of attendees pretty easily, whereas the webinar and video conferencing tech struggles. Second, it's going to give you a lot more flexibility in terms of the inputs and the layouts. And really what I'm talking about is the production quality. So even on today's live stream, those of you that are watching at home, you notice that we're able to do things like lower third graphics. We're able to switch between just a single shot or a shot of maybe me plus the presentation. And we're able to kind of skip past that world of webinars where it's just for 45 minutes, presentation left, speaker on right, and maybe someone's on video, maybe not. Maybe it's just the presentation and the voice over it. And so with live streaming, you're able to kind of really differentiate that presentation style of experience and make it more broadcast quality. Now you've got virtual conference platforms. We'll talk about some of those. Some of them have been around for 10, 15 years. A lot of features, but aren't necessarily maybe the most modern approaches. And what we're seeing rapidly is kind of this whole space is coming together, and I'll talk through that in just a bit. So just some examples, right? So live streaming providers that you may have heard of. In the B2B space, you've got companies like Brightcove and Boxcast. In historically B2C, but increasingly B2B, you had companies like Ustream, which is now part of Watson Media inside of IBM, companies like Vimeo and others that are really good, again, at that live streaming technology. You've got video conferencing providers, some that really started with just video conferencing, so i.e. conversations, and then evolved into webinars, more presentations. Others that went the other way, so like WebEx started with presentations, and now they've got some video conferencing. And you'll see that kind of influence how their core experiences work, right? Where Zoom is very video first, WebEx is a little bit more presentation first. And then you've got some really big names here that you can't ignore. Microsoft, Google, Amazon. It's an arms race, and it's really kind of exciting to see new releases coming out literally weekly of Teams versus Zoom versus Amazon Chime even, where they're going to see a lot of innovation on the video conferencing front especially, and so it's going to be pretty exciting to see what we can do there. Now, there's also some of these, let's call it maybe legacy virtual conference providers, so full-blown conferences, right? 100 sessions, 20, 30, 100 exhibitors, lots of functionality to kind of handle multiple tracks, maybe even creating these kind of 3D environments, somewhat skeuomorphic, right? And they recreate the in-person event world digitally. Now, that's a pretty common trend we see with new technologies, is they tend to try to recreate what they're replacing, just to give that sense of the familiar so people understand where they're going. But very quickly, just like we saw with the iPhone, right, where the first 5 versions of iOS were kind of skeuomorphic. When you went into the notepad, it looked like a yellow sheet of paper. But then when we got to iOS 7, we kind of moved past that and embraced the technology for what it is. So I think with COVID, we've seen a massive acceleration here from the familiar to embracing the technology for everything that it can do. And so really there's this whole second generation of virtual event platforms that's come up pretty much overnight. And now if you read TechCrunch at all, they're all raising 10, 20, 30 million dollars, and there's a lot of money going in space. So it's pretty exciting, and certainly I'm at Cvent, we're investing heavily into it as well. Now, there's some other technology trends that are kind of happening here that are influencing what these virtual event experiences look like, how they work, what kind of technologies they put in the hands of event organizers and event marketers. So some of these trends are video editing, right? Everyone is a video editor now. Look at some of the stats from Gen Z. 89% of Gen Z use YouTube weekly. So those are some pretty crazy stats, and obviously Gen Z is increasingly a larger and larger part of the workforce. So they're just fluent in all things video, and it's not just consuming video, it's also producing video. Now you've got platforms like Twitch. So Twitch is largely a platform similar to YouTube, a lot of streaming video there. It's not recorded video, it's live streamed video. And most of the content is people playing video games, meaning they're just sharing themselves playing a video game. Sounds crazy, but the rise of Twitch, I think it's, they're consuming, so this is Q1 2020, I know the stats are small here, but Twitch surpassed YouTube, Facebook, and Mixer, I believe, all combined in terms of hours watched in Q1 of 2020. And this isn't just teenagers. 55% of Twitch's viewing audience is 25 or older. So not teenagers just viewing this, it's a really popular platform. And with that came the ability to up-level it. It's not just a screen share. I'm not just gonna share my screen and what I'm doing in this video game. I'm actually gonna share myself on video. I'm gonna interact with my followers. They're even gonna get donations and revenue streams from this. And so really what we're seeing with the rise of Twitch is this whole new live stream production ecosystem. So today we're using StreamYard to actually produce this experience. So there's companies like that started to allow you to do live stream production without a $10,000 AV board or a $2,000 a seat piece of hardware or software. Instead, something that you can just download to your laptop or even run just through a browser is available for $15, $20 a month. Now, there's some more sophisticated softwares out there. There's even some others that are really focused not just on the consumer, but more on the enterprise. So tools like SocialLive, Stage 10, and TVid are in that space as well. And it's really able to change that quality of production, right? It's not the thing we got used to with webinars, again, the presentation and the voice over it. Now, with virtual cameras and augmented reality, this is just another way that when we think about augmented reality, I know in the event industry, we talked about it for years. And we basically said, hey, augmented reality will be cool because attendees can come and look through their phone and they can kind of augment your real world event environment. What we're talking about here with augmented reality is something totally different. We're now talking about your speaker's environment. How can we transform theirs, right? So if they have bad lighting, which we always complain about, if they have a bad background, if they have all those things. So we're not talking just about Zoom backgrounds, we're talking about transforming the environment around the speaker with the magic of camera vision and augmented reality. So actually, it's not that far into the future. Snapchat, which is largely thought of as a social media network company, in reality, they're an augmented reality platform. They filmed their entire Snap Partner Summit in June of this year in this nice amphitheater by the beach. Except for that was not a real amphitheater, it wasn't a real beach, but it had sounds. He was even casting his shadow on the stage as he moved, and all the speakers were as well. Of course, that backdrop is all fake as well. So the only thing real there, so to speak, was the speaker themselves. And so you can actually transform your speaker's environment with augmented reality as well. And that's just another way to differentiate the experience. This was actually me at Cvent Connect Virtual just a couple weeks ago. I was demonstrating some of this, so I was trying to figure out how to demonstrate it to you guys. Literally, I could be in a desert-like environment where I had some sunglasses on. Those obviously weren't real. There was things floating around in the space around me. I even could shave my beard, and I could talk, and it looked like I was entirely beardless. I do a little trick where I just remove it, and I have it in my hand, and I can put it back. It looks like magic, but the reality is it's just augmented reality, and it's got really smart camera vision. It can take a basic web camera, and it knows the features on my face and where they are. And with that, you can kind of create that augmented reality magic. And so you're starting to see other technologies. There's one called literally, there's no vowels in it. It's HMM, where you're able to have your presentation behind you in your room as if it was on an easel. There's no easel there, no presentation. So you're starting to get a sense of kind of how you can transform speaker environments, even if your speakers are remote. And when we think about hybrid, we tend to think of the speakers always being in the room, some people being in the room and then some people being at home, but let's remember why we're doing hybrid. It's because not everybody can travel, and that will apply to your speakers as well. So there's going to be times where you're going to have remote speakers talking to your audience in the room, so you're still going to be thinking about that as well. Now, ultimately, from the trends perspective, and then we'll get into some of the nitty-gritty around hybrid, what we think we're seeing here really is the convergence of historically 3 mutually exclusive spaces. There's the webinar space, the virtual conference space, and of course, the live face-to-face events space. And virtual conferences, they've had their place, not exactly a high growth space over the last 10, 15 years, not exactly a space anybody was rushing to reinvent. But certainly, a lot of people were running virtual conferences before COVID. Webinars, they serve their place, right? They train your staff and your employees across your organization. They generate lots of leads for your marketing department if that's one of their goals. And it is that kind of tried and true format of the voice over the PowerPoint, increasingly the video next to the PowerPoint. And then ultimately we had face-to-face events, which generated a lot of value, right? That face-to-face interaction instantly went virtual overnight. And so that digital experience started to be reinvented. At first it was a one-off, just for the April event, just for the May event. It's like, oh, well, maybe we got to start looking at fall. Maybe we got to start looking to 2021. And as people started to think about, hey, what does an annual roadmap or what does a forever roadmap look like? They started to question, hey, what does our digital strategy look like? Like, why is there a webinar running on the same day as my virtual event? Wait a second, what's the difference between a virtual event and a webinar? They're starting to sound the same. Yet the expectations changed. They wanted a branded experience, an interactive and a more immersive experience, more of a sense of community within that event, even for something like this today, right? Where it's an hour or two, not necessarily multiple days and multiple tracks of content. And so ultimately, what we think we're seeing is this whole new space, which is live digital engagement. And everyone, it's become an imperative in their organization to formulate a live digital engagement strategy, end-to-end, small to large, regional to international, throughout the year. And this is going to be something that isn't going to change even post-COVID. Now, there's a lot of different elements to thinking about virtual experiences, or really any event experience. We tend to kind of organize it in a couple different ways, and we'll walk through this today. Content, community, sponsorship, insights and incentives. We talk about the Cvent platform as well, just ways to create success and execute at a high level. And so we'll go through the 4 different aspects. I think these are key pillars that if you execute at a high level across these top 4 pillars, you're going to have success no matter what type of event you're running, in person, hybrid, or virtual. So when we think to the path back to face-to-face events, we really don't have a doubt that it's going to be through hybrid. I mean, literally, we're living it. This is my first face-to-face event in quite some time. And there's a lot of reasons why we don't have a doubt that hybrid is going to be the path back to face-to-face. Well, there's a couple of reasons. So one, of course, health and safety concerns. Even with the vaccine, there's still going to be at-risk segments. There's still going to be a long tail there. And so those are going to be ones where if you want to be accessible to as much of your audience as possible, you're going to need to acknowledge and embrace those concerns. Limited travel budgets. A couple ways. One, internal corporate or government travel budgets, obviously this year have been slashed quite a bit, will be slashed a good bit, likely going in through 2021. Same with marketing budgets. So if you've got sponsors that are used to traveling to your event to send 5 people to man their booth, maybe they don't have the budget to send 5. Maybe they have the budget to send 1 or 2 now. And those marketing budgets probably won't spring back to 2019 levels. Probably not, definitely not this year, probably not next year either. And so you got to think about how you embrace those more limited marketing budgets, less budget to travel. Venues as well, the same venue, the same space. This room could have housed maybe 150-person session. Now it's going to be a lot tighter, right? We're thinking about a room that can hold 30, 45 people. So venues are putting more restrictions in place so that they can partner with you to deliver a safe experience for your kind of joint audience. And then finally, just thinking international, right? Borders are opening and closing with 24, 48 hours notice. And so if you've got an international contingent, the only way you can really kind of embrace that audience is offering a virtual component to basically ensure that you're going to be able to connect with them by way of your event. Now, there's been companies that have done hybrid for a long time. This is a pretty dated slide here, but I keep it in just to kind of show the value of just expanding your reach. So SAP's event Sapphire Now, they have been running hybrid in 2013, 2015. Just look at the growth pattern. Of course, the venue could only hold 20,000 each year, so that didn't really grow year over year. Of course, this is a big event, but they had roughly 80,000 people attend virtually in 13. Fast forward 2 years, now they've got a 150,000 person digital audience. And so think about like how much their platform of SAP Sapphire Now, you're actually referring to an event as a platform and not just an event. How much that grow and how much that grew and what they can do with that larger platform. Now, not only can they do something with it, because they've expanded the amount of connections they have, the size of their community, but their sponsors are going to want to tap into that as well. And likely more sponsors are going to want to be a part of it, and they're going to want to be a part of it in a bigger way. So from a monetization perspective, there's no doubt that going hybrid is going to enable greater monetization opportunities also. Now, to anti-define hybrid, what hybrid is not is, now this is a small event. Now I have this talk track, so I do forgive me for this. It's not just putting a camera in a ballroom, even though there's our camera. You can't just have a camera in a ballroom and assume that the audience at home is going to have a great experience. And we're going to talk through some of the aspects of that and how you give them a sense of community as well. And we're living that at today's event with kind of our virtual networking right after this to give them that sense of community. It was actually something I was going to talk about anyway. But you do have to think about differentiating the experience. So while it is one event, it is very much going to be two experiences. And so a metaphor that I use quite a bit is live sports. Probably the longest running hybrid event experience out there. Did we always refer to live sports as events? Maybe, maybe not. But certainly, can you imagine the reach of something like the NFL if they had only run in local stadiums to this day? They would not be an international presence for what was just a USA-driven sport. They wouldn't be a $1 trillion industry. And what they produce for that person on the couch at the home versus the one in the stadium is very much a different experience than two different experiences. Yet it's one event. It's two teams, one outcome, but there's a whole different way. So we'll talk about some of those ways that you can think of it as two experiences for the events that you run as well. Now, there's some common challenges, pitfalls. That peanut butter spread, again, back to trying to treat everything as one experience. So just as long as I capture what's happening on site on video, just kind of spread it out. Ultimately, what happens is the on-site experience gets a bit distracted, and the one at home, people end up kind of feeling like they're isolated and left in a silo and not really a part of it. And so what it's going to take, though, this is again another common challenge, it's going to take an investment, and it's not a small one, to create two experiences, right? You might have different teams, different roles, producing different content. We'll talk about that. So you have to make a really thoughtful business case for that added investment to go from just an in-person event to adding into that virtual component. Because it's going to take things like production planning. And then part of that business case is going to be leveraging that newfound scale and actually translating it to sponsor ROI. We can't just assume, hey, bigger network sponsors are going to see the return automatically. You're going to have to take a more thoughtful approach to connecting your sponsors, not only with the people in the room, but also those at home. So, as I said, we'll kind of go through these key pillars. When we think about content, we talked about sports. Let's think about the types of content that is produced. Of course, in the stadium, you've got the stadium announcer. You've got the halftime show, the band, if it's a college football game, and you've got the game and the people sitting next to you. And that's kind of the experience. And of course, you got the tailgate, the before and the after, all the fun stuff. But at home, you're interacting with an entirely different cast of characters. I've got the announcers in the booth, the sideline reporter, the views from the Goodyear blimp, the interviews, the studio-produced halftime show, right? It's entirely separate, entirely parallel from what's going on on-site at the event. So it really does take that shift to start thinking as not just an event organizer, but actually a producer. One way I think about it is I used to go to the 930 Club quite a bit. I can claim it was because of COVID I don't go, but it was really, as I'm getting a little old. So in 2012, I would go all the time, but I always preferred to stand on the main floor and not in the balcony. Now, obviously I can because I'm tall and I can see, but I always felt like the balcony was an experience where I watched other people attend a concert. I wanted to be at the concert. And so part of it is like being a part of that. So you want to make sure that people feel like they're having a first-class experience. They're not just watching other people go to an event. Now, like I said, there's going to be different types of roles that are needed. We're probably going to see a head of events that's going to be head of the on-site experience and head of the digital experience. Maybe there's a way to kind of lead running these types of hybrid event experiences. The content's going to be different. There's going to be differentiated content that's going to resonate in different ways, even though it is still one event. So let's think about some of the types of exclusive virtual content you may want to produce. So just like sports, we kind of went through the different types. Who is going to be on site representing your at-home audience? Who's going to be speaking into the camera and saying, hey, welcome back for day 2? And then what are they going to be saying to them? What are we going to be producing? What are we going to be presenting to them? So who's going to be the play-by-play? Who's going to be providing the quote-unquote color commentary and giving their thoughts or speculation about what might happen at the next presentation? Or, oh, wasn't that great what we heard from that panel? All right, so giving some context to the audience from more of an expert's opinion. You've got the person on the street, right? So that one that might be on the trade show floor or maybe in the convention hall or in the lobby. It kind of gives people a sense of the feel and the excitement of the event and translates that to the audience at home. They can even use that to send some momentum to the keynote room so it's not just a cold start. And finally, these are ways to produce unique content. So I might have interviews, not just panels at a breakout session, but I can bring on industry experts to have a 5-minute conversation, a 10-minute conversation. Maybe this is a new sponsorship opportunity where you can bring in a CEO or a VP of sales from one of your top sponsors, and they can have an interview and share some of the things they're looking to. So again, another way to make sure that they're going to access that audience at home. So it's not just about creating different experiences though. So I don't want to go over-index too far. You also want to acknowledge that this is a shared experience. And there's more than what meets the eye, even for someone at home or someone there. And that they're part of something greater. So what are some ways to create that sense of shared experience? Well, hopefully we're doing a little bit of it today. You guys are probably seeing some of the questions come through question and answer. Some are coming from you here in the room. Some are coming from you at home, but some of you are accessing it through the mobile app. I'm going to actually check it out right now. I'm not actually just checking my phone or my email. That would be a little rude. So let's see what we have going on here. So, obviously some of you are seeing this view. This is what the audience at home is seeing, right? They're seeing the live stream and they're seeing the questions. And then the audience here, not on their laptop, they're watching here in the room, but they can still participate through the mobile app with live Q&A. So let's see if we've been approving some questions. So good. So we've got some questions approved. We've got a couple votes. Just so you know, you can all upvote questions you'd like to see answered. So that way we kind of go with the most popular questions first. So that is another aspect you can check out. But that creates that sense of shared experience as well, which can be a little bit of a challenge, right? Because we're not in the same place. Now, from a community perspective, are there ways to connect your audience members together? No, I'm not going to say that you need to create a sense of deep community between an audience that's in the room and one at home. And that people travel, whether it's the 30-minute commute to a 3,000-mile flight, they travel to have that face-to-face interaction, and you really want to encourage that. But still, you can create that sense of community even just within the virtual audience itself. So we're not going to ask you guys today to log into Zoom from the ballroom to talk to someone that's not here. And that wouldn't make sense to you, but there's still an opportunity to create a sense of virtual or digital community. So that might be by way of breakout rooms. So we've seen all sorts of things like collaborative sessions where you might invite people in. Maybe there's 50 people that join or 100 people that join and say, great, hey guys, thanks for joining. We're going to separate you out into smaller breakout groups. You're going to discuss, collaborate on this problem, and come back and share your results. And so we can go and separate them out. There's actually a great feature on Zoom called breakout rooms, so that they're now in that 5 to 6 person discussion. They can meet organically, not a forced, hi, my name is, but this is what I do, and yeah, here's my thoughts on this problem, and share those results back to the broader room. And so this is just an organic way to create that sense of community, even within that digital network. Or of course, we can do something closer to a happy hour and have people kind of just more organically interact, especially within an association where people may know each other already. Now, on the sponsorship front, some things don't change, right? Sponsors want to be part of events for two primary reasons. They want the brand awareness of being in there, being in the thick of it, being thought of as a leader in the industry, and they want cold, hard lead generation, right? And so how can you deliver that? And how can you deliver it in an increased way because you've expanded your audience and thus your opportunity? In the virtual world, we've seen a lot of planners struggle with delivering value and delivering ROI to sponsors. It's tough to get digital foot traffic to that virtual booth. And so a really common tactic that we've seen that I think has been quite successful is embracing sponsors as being part of your native content for your event, putting them on the schedule. They're part of the official catalog. It's a sponsored session. They're going to provide some thought leadership so they get that brand awareness, and maybe you even share the attendance list, not of your whole event. It's not really a good data privacy practice, but as long as you communicate it, hey, if you attend a sponsored session, we're going to share your information with that sponsor. That's a great way to deliver on the brand awareness and the lead generation promise and actually get people there, because when they're a part of the official schedule, that certainly helps. Now, if you're going to have a virtual booth, it's probably going to require additional buy-in from your sponsor. Not because they don't want to, but because the people that are there on site, their full attention needs to be with your audience on site. So they're not going to be able to man a digital booth while on the side of their booth looking at their laptops. That's not a good experience. And so you're going to have to ask your exhibitors to participate with maybe somebody back in the office or at home remotely and man that digital booth so that they can do things like virtual appointments. They can do ad hoc video conferencing, participate in chat. There's all sorts of technologies and tools that are being offered to the exhibitors. But for a hybrid event, you're now going to need to communicate that to a sponsor. Hey, just so you're thinking about it the right way, we're going to have a digital audience. We're going to have an in-person audience. So you're going to need to think about how to tackle both, because we're going to put you in front of both. And this is how we're going to do it. And so whether it's an appointments program, ad hoc conferencing, chat, all sorts of ways you can connect those sponsors with that remote audience. And then finally, just thinking about what it means to do advertising, right? It's not just signage on site. It's not just a booth on site. It's not a branded lanyard, right? It's now thinking about video pre-rolls. So before a live stream starts, maybe I play a 5-minute video and it's got 5 ads in it. Or outro videos. Yeah, thanks to our sponsor for this session. Maybe there's ways to leverage both. So there's an intro to the live stream, then you turn that live stream into on-demand content that's going to be accessed for days, weeks, months after the event. That's still a sponsorship opportunity. So every time someone plays that video, maybe there's a 5-second intro reel that's going to go to promote that sponsor. So you're delivering value, not just the 2 days of the event, but the whole thing. Now, when you're thinking about making that business case for hybrid, this is the kind of way to think, right? If we map out, so I'm going to walk you through this a little bit. If we map out what sponsors want, so from on the brand awareness spectrum all the way to the lead gen spectrum, to where they're going to be able to deliver on it, or let's say capture it, so the in-person experience to the virtual experience. If you didn't offer that virtual component, and you didn't take your event hybrid, there's so many sponsorship opportunities that you're not going to be able to tap into, right? Everything above kind of the axis here is no longer an opportunity. And so when you're making that business case, you can really go and say, hey, this is all the added sponsorship opportunity. This is all the added engagement we can get with this virtual audience. And ultimately, we're going to have added monetization opportunities. And this is how going hybrid is going to make monetary sense, makes sense for the success of the business. So finally, I want to think about post-event. Now, when we think about some of the lasting impacts of COVID, I think capturing content was never something we maybe fully appreciated. I think we were pretty satisfied if we got the presenter's PowerPoint and maybe posted it on the website or in the mobile app. And we said, hey, the PowerPoints will be there. We never really tried to capture on video a presentation, for example. nor share that after. Now, some events have done it, sure, don't want to diminish those efforts. But I think one of the lasting impacts of COVID is going to be everyone's now realizing the value of having your recordings, having your content, having your videos available for days, weeks, months after the event. They're so valuable. There's so much you can do with that content that's going to live on and you can leverage it. And so even if you're not going to necessarily do a live stream, not saying everything needs to be live streamed, but everything should at least be captured on video. So you can make it available in maybe like an on-demand content library. We always think that, hey, why is every planner not their own masterclass producer? Because that's kind of what you're doing. You're producing this great content that can help build your community, build the value you're adding, right? And that's gonna have some reciprocity to it. And so capturing that content, making it available to your audience, it might even offer additional monetization opportunities. We've seen plenty of groups actually charge for digital content library access. Even to those that are in person, if there's multiple tracks to your event, people can only be at one place at one time. So maybe you give them access for an extra $100 or an extra $200 to all the content. So sure, while they went to the sessions they still have access to 8 times more content than they originally had when they were there on site. So it's a great way to think about monetization, especially for associations right now that are really struggling on the monetization side because of losing some of that sponsorship revenue. So they're looking for new ways to monetize by way of subscriptions, new types of sponsorships, and ways to monetize content they're already producing. And then finally, just thinking about, okay, well, now the experience is over. How do I know what happened? How can I leverage the insights I get to improve the experience or make a bigger impact of the experience on my organization? So there's a lot of data you're going to have, but now it's going to come from 2 different audiences. It's going to look a little bit different, but there's ways to normalize it because you've got all the people walking around in the physical world and then all the people walking around in the digital world, but it still kind of looks like an event, right? You've got attendance data for the overall event, for the individual session, how much time people spent in each room. You've got digital engagement data. So even those on site, and you're clicking around in the app, you're engaging with different content. So that's saying something about what your audience is interested in. And of course, our audience at home is doing that as well. You've got your event and session feedback. So capturing that kind of direct feedback on the quality of the content or the event experience. Yet it can be a little bit overwhelming. So how can you put signal to noise? So try not to show too much Cvent product in here, but I thought one thing that was cool that we've been building for a couple of years was something called engagement scoring. So we basically built a central data pipeline that actually aggregates every single attendee interaction from the website to the mobile app to the on-site experience check-in to scan it in a booth. And kind of centralizes it so that you can start to understand what's going on at your event. So at Cvent Connect, which was an entirely virtual event, we had about 42,000 registrants that came in different ways and different times. So 43,000, I guess, is what it ended up being. This is actual real screenshot from Connect, where we had over 1.1 million actions that were kind of going into the scoring methodology. So we understood, hey, who are our top 20% most engaged audience members versus who are the people that just logged in for 10 minutes of the keynote and then left. We could also instrument different slices of the event. Maybe we were only interested in people that interacted with our event cloud related content. This is a little bit to Cvent, but so we could generate an actual buyer score. We could say, yeah, 42,000 people, but hey, the top 20% of the buyer score, that's the one we're gonna have very valuable sales time spent on. And so every part of the experience, so you get a sense for all the different types of engagement, and it gets bigger over time, where you can start to put signal to noise, and you're not going to have to go through 20 pages of Excel sheets to try and get a sense of what should happen next. I think one of the most kind of scary things in the event world, when I would talk to customers 3-4 years ago, so tell me about your post-event plans. What do you do post-event? And 9 times out of 10, the answer was, well, we send out the feedback survey, we send out the thank you, and we tell people how to access the content if it's there. That's about it. Because why? Well, we fell behind on running all our other events, or that's over, we got to move on. And we haven't really figured out how to automate that post-event playbook, which ultimately is kind of what we say is tripping at the finish line. Like, you've got people that are so excited, they're engaged in your community. how do you capture that and kind of bottle it into something greater? And so there's a lot of different ways, whether it's through content, understanding who's engaged, to really think about a post-event activation strategy that's going to make a bigger impact to your organization, your customer's organization. So with that, why don't we do some question and answer? I don't know how I did on time. Oh, wow, we're right at 7. Okay, well, let's see what some of the questions are. I'll take any in here first. Any questions?
Well, I have to say, we participated in the Cvent Connect, and I just have to commend you all on what an awesome experience that was to pull that together with so many participants and seeing the CEOs that contributed to all of it. The person who ran our lobby and our booth should be an airline manager. It was incredible how she was sending everybody breakouts, so it was really cool to participate in it. As much as I'm for in-person meetings, it was really cool to participate in that. So
Well, thank you. Thank you. We really appreciated that. It was a stressful experience, but it was pretty exciting. I posted a video of our war room, so we were actually in the office to like kind of produce it and run it together, and it was like a whole command center. So yeah, I took all of last week off. I went to the Catskills. My brother opened a bakery, and I just washed dishes for him. Felt pretty good. I was pretty happy to be a dishwasher for a week. That was just fine. Okay, let's see here. So we've got a question with a vote here. Let's see. Will Cvent be adjusting? Oh, this is interesting. So will Cvent be adjusting their posture / ability to track invitation forwarding, i.e. locking invitations so they're unable to be forwarded? This would be helpful to government planners. So we have a forward feature that can always be turned on and off. And certainly we always think about making sure that our experiences can only be accessed by the people that are supposed to be accessed by them. And so we have like a registration approval features, and we have, like the 2-factor authentication that we have to actually access experiences like the mobile app or the website experience that everyone at home is on. So I don't know if I'm answering the question because it might be about a specific feature that I'm not quite knowing about. But there are ways to create private event experiences, kind of semi-private and more public ones.
But that definitely is a feature that's available.
Yes, well, great. Well, I'm glad I'm a little rusty on my core event management functionality, but so there we go. Okay, so let's see the next one here. Yeah, okay, this is good. So we'll see if it adapt their virtual planning software so you can have a continuous open call for abstracts and manage assigning them to different virtual events on the back end without having to send them a rejection. I'm going to take that as a feature request. And I will definitely get it to our team that is in charge of abstract. So we have been thinking a lot about the speaker experience, whether that's content submission and approval and workflows. And we've been adding to it over the last 3 or 4 years. But there's definitely an interesting concept in there that's, hey, I've got a really interesting speaker, maybe not a good fit for this event, but maybe a good fit for the next one. How can I move that around but across my event program? So I don't know if we've thought of it that way yet, but I'm going to get that feedback there. Increasingly too, just logistics with virtual speakers, getting them the right links and the right login credentials and make sure they know where they're going and what they're doing. It can be a little disorienting in the virtual world. So having a speaker resource center has been something that we actually used to charge for it. And now we're opening it up to all of our customers and just making it available to with the virtual events just to help them coordinate better logistics with their planners or with their speakers. Let's see. Do we know how many people are attending in person versus online? I actually don't have the data right now. I would have it if I had a username and password and on arrival. I don't have it on me, but we do have that data. So we've made sure that we think about check-in data in a very similar way, so that when it comes through digital or when it comes through in person, it all kind of looks the same, but there's ways to parse it out if you're looking for the differences. Let's see here. Is the presentation going to be sent to attendees? So I like this question in that it also brings up another bigger question. So I'll give you the political spin to it. Sure, we can send out the presentation. Now we can also send out the recording, but we don't even have to send out the recording. There's an even better answer. So, the number one question I got throughout, I had multiple presentations at our event, and I've seen it in others, is will you send out the recording? Or will you send out the presentation? And it's such a way that we've just been trained to think like, oh yeah, send out the recording. But the way live streaming technology works, at least the good live streaming technology, is that there is no such thing as a recording and a file you need to go download and send out to your audience. It's available in place. So our audience at home, when we're done, it'll take about 30 minutes, but it'll just automatically be there for replay. It's almost, and so at any time, you guys will be able to log into the website, and we're bringing the feature to the mobile app too, but you'll be able to log into the website and just play the video again. So there's no need to download a recording, send out a recording, put it in a box, like all those things are gone. So the new world of kind of live streaming is you can play back that video whenever you want. So you want to create that sense of live, because we are live right now. But for those of you at home, those of you here, you can just log into the website and you'll be able to see the presentation and this whole video, the whole production, because we're actually doing more than just the camera shot. We've got a couple of different things going on. You'll be able to play it back at any time. So I think that's just a kind of a new world that we're unlearning the old webinar world and kind of learning this new broadcast, live cast kind of world. All right, let's see here. So that was that question. Okay. All right, so here's one. So is there any work being done by Cvent to do their own backend integration with Adobe Connect, similar to what they've done with Zoom, given Zoom is not applicable for many government customers? So yeah, so I think always linking to these solutions kind of is what's there and making sure the data integrates, right? So there's really two things you're ever talking about. You're talking about either the experience or the data. So the data would be who's registered, can I pass that into that system? Who shows up, can I pass that back to Cvent? So attendance, registration data, attendance data. Generally, that's what you're talking about. I'm oversimplifying it a bit. There might be other engagement data and stuff that you want to pass through too. So we're definitely always looking at expanding that. We either do it through third-party partnerships or through our integration hub so that you can have that data tie-in. Then there's the experience side. So can you have a fully embedded experience that's going to not require downloads or more complicated things? That's where the experience that our audience at home is having, right? You're just in a live stream. You didn't have to download anything. We could have produced this in Zoom. We could have produced this in any tool that allows for something called an Rtmp output. So Rtmp stands for Real-Time Messaging Protocol. Not every platform supports it. I don't know if Adobe Connect is one of them. But essentially, we're kind of bifurcating where your audience is and where your speakers and your presenters are. And there's a lot of added flexibility, and it's nice because the attendee experience is less complicated, more clean, more branded. It's not inviting them into someone else's platform. Really, it's just going into your event's experience. And your presenter experience, you've got a lot of flexibility with it. So any tool that supports that Rtmp output, we're able to support. So today, we're on StreamYard, and StreamYard streaming into the Cvent Attendee Hub. But we could be on Zoom, we could be on any of those tools that I showed you on the live stream production, like all of those support that protocol. So hopefully that somewhat answered that question. I don't want to go too over on our time. Well, let's see. Okay, well, I think we got through most of the questions there. I think that's a good smatter. Any other questions here in the room?
What suggestions do you have for Cvent to avoid what some are calling, what was it, the Zoom gloom? Of just being glued to a screen all day, every day. Plenty of research has shown that that is not good for up here. So what types of things are you suggesting to virtual audience members to not get entranced in that?
Yeah. So yeah, Zoom gloom, Zoom doom, Zoom fatigue, I've heard. So I think it's interesting. I think some of it goes to kind of, I think of it a couple ways. What's happening in the box, what's happening kind of around the box, and then what types of experiences are you offering? So in the box being the presentation. So I think in a digital world, in a broadcast world, our expectations of change and velocity are very different than in a room or let's say in a theater or on a stage. So you expect change maybe every 7-10 minutes in the room. But if you look at local news, you look at ESPN, they're changing every 45 seconds, every minute and a half, 90 seconds max, right? There is a change. Now, it might be just a camera angle, it might be a graphic, it may be a ship to VOD prepackaged content to video on demand content. So it's about as much change as you can get in dynamism. So that might be from layouts, different camera angles, different speakers. And so that's one way to do it. Just in a traditional presentation, you're thinking about length, you're thinking about change, you're thinking about kind of velocity of change. It may not make sense to do hour-long presentations. That's a lot of time to just be sitting and trying to keep your attention. And let's be honest, everybody typically has 20 tabs open, Slack open, email open, phone next to them, iPad. It's gonna be tough to get their attention even if they leave you on the screen. So that's part of it. I think the other part is thinking about how do you mix in one-way versus two-way interactivity. How do you give people breaks? Sometimes people just don't think about breaks when it's digital. It's like, no, this will play here, this will play here, this will play here. Asking someone for 8 hours of their day is a lot. And so I think one other piece I'll mention, and I think is an interesting area of experimentation is, and this is a little bit not for hybrid, this is a little bit more for pure virtual events. You no longer have the constraint of having flown someone in away from their home. You're on a clock, basically. You can't ask people to be away for so long. So your event experience needs to be 1, 2, or 3 days, maybe 4. In virtual, why does it have to be? Why can't it be 6 weeks? Why can't it be 10 weeks? And maybe it's only 90 minutes a day. You're also going to start to realize the staffing implications of that are pretty attractive, where you go from needing 56 people to run a 2-day experience to, hey, my team of 4 can run an awesome 6-week experience if I'm only producing 2 or 3 things a day. So we've seen Google Cloud did a 10-week experience, ServiceNow did a 6-week experience, and they do it in different ways to kind of keep people interested in coming back. I don't know if I've seen enough data to show how successful or not those were, but it's really an interesting area where people have said, hey, the constraints of the 2-3 day event aren't necessarily here anymore. What does that mean? So that's just another way to realize, hey, maybe you can't make an 8-hour ask of an attendee in a purely virtual world. Well, awesome. For those online, we got the networking thing. Do you want to say, do you have a mic? There we go. Well, thanks for your time, guys. Thanks to everyone at home as well. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, McNeil. That was amazing. Don't worry, I'm gonna teach all y'all about Twitch next. It's fine. So if you are virtually with us, you can exit this session and enter the networking session through the same way you got into this one. If you're here with us live, we'll be out on the patio. It's an open bar. So, and Christina has parking passes. You only need the pass. Don't put in the one you got when you came in. That's how you get locked in. Single exit. Thank you. But thank you everyone for coming, both online and in person. Shannon and Melissa will be online with you virtually networking. And thanks so much. We'll see you in October.
All right.